What do I need a man for?
What do I need a man for? I've written a few things here that you need men for.
Oh, certain people keep tagging this man in my videos, and it's honestly laughable, but let me do the real math for you real quick so you never ever have to question whether this man's like little graphs and charts have any legitimacy to them at all. Let's put that to bed once and for all. Because it comes presented as so factual and as so well thought out, but the whole math part of it is operating on some very, very important and what should be obvious omissions. The question is, what do I need a man for? And apparently the answer is men built everything. Men built civilization, invented infrastructure, they invented defense, they invented technology, they invented invention. They invented taxes, technology's on there twice actually. They invented it twice, they invented shipping, and they invented food. So men invented everything, men invented civilization, and stupid women are just standing on top of it asking, what do I need a man for? Well, Ho Math says, back when you all were still living in huts, men would fight over the women. There's a vagueness and an unansweredness in this picture because why are y'all fighting for the women? Why don't you just take the land and kill the women? Why don't you take the land and send the women to another land with their men? Like, why don't you just, why did you need the women specifically? The men were okay to kill. It was okay to kill the other men. Why were you keeping the women? What do you need women for anyway? We'll come back to that question, but first, let's ask another question. Why was there only a man here? You guys don't think women wanted to participate in this? Do you honestly think that women really just wanted to stand there and watch a world get built around them with no input from them whatsoever? The infrastructure, food, shipping, everything like that, women could have helped. So why was it just men building the civilization? That's because women were intentionally kept out. Because women were viewed as a resource. We're going to go back to the other question that I just asked of why did they need women in the first place? Why were they fighting for land and women and not just land? It's because women really built civilization. What is civilization made up of? It's actually not made up of infrastructure, defense, technology, inventions, taxes, food, and shipping. Civilization is made out of people. And that's what y'all needed women for. The question is not why do women need men? The question is why do men need women? And the answer is very disturbing. Because why do they have this instinct to stay safe? Because they're in danger. They're in danger from men. And men are in danger from other men. But women are in double danger because they not only face the risk of being killed, they actually face the risk of being enslaved and impregnated by a different tribe. And that's why they needed to be protected. Because giving away women meant giving away people, meant giving away the ability to create more people, to protect your land that you live on. Okay, so women were not protected just for sitting there looking pretty and for being women and because they're so helpless and because their instinct is to stay safe. Their instinct to stay safe should really have taken them away from the men. But men made rules to prevent that. Some of the oldest written rules and laws have to do with limiting women's freedom of mobility, of their very movement. Things that women were kept around for was for their ability to have children, to make babies. And it only got worse once we got out of these little villages because then they became able to be trapped by just one man because they had their access to resources cut off by men who wanted to control resources. And women had to rely on men to stay safe because they didn't have access to resources on their own like men did. Men trapped women in the system. But that's the part you don't want to talk about. That's the math you don't want to do. And honestly, I feel like I can stop right there because already you're building the rest of this entire argument on an imaginary wrong that was done to men when really the wrong was done to women. It was the women that were entrapped, enslaved, and impregnated by men to build civilization. The same civilization that women were repeatedly, until very recently, kept out of. And now you want to shame women for asking what they need a man for when men built all this society. It was built off of us. It was built off of women as much as, if not more, than it was built off of men, because at least men had freedom of movement. They had access to resources. Bearing the tax burden means you actually got to go to work and get paid, which already separates you from the women, which gives you more rights and more power than women ever had. No women are thinking like this. They're not confused as to what changed. We know that we now have the right to divorce. We have the right to open our own bank account. We have the right to go to work. We know damn well what's changed. We know that we were granted rights to our own body to not let men control that about us when we get pregnant. And what changed is those rights have recently been taken back away. Why do you think that is? Because one of us can be enslaved and abused when our autonomy is taken away. Where are the children in this entire little graph sketch, whatever? We're counting out the fact that women were used to create people that made up the civilization that you talk about. And women were used to do that forcibly. And they weren't even paid for it like the men. They weren't recognized for it like the men. And to this day, you only recognize the men. And that's the real math here. And that's what women are asking. Why the fuck do I need a man? Because a man's just going to come along and say, well, I built all this. And he's not going to say the silent part, which is at your expense. The fact that women now have almost equal access to all of this as men, that's what's making them ask the question of what do I need a man for? Because it turns out that this, whole civilization and society that men have threatened women with into going out into the workforce and you're just going to have to go work and all this stuff, it's not that fucking hard. It takes 8 hours a day, you pay your taxes, and you go on your merry way. And you use those resources to fucking live your life. It's not hard. Okay, it's just the men that's been pretending that it's like really hard to go to work and build civilization and all that stuff. Is that why y'all did such a shitty job of it? Because it's not that hard. Women go to work for 8 hours a day all the time. Now, they don't want to do paid work and unpaid work. If we're both going to be doing paid work, then men have to contribute unpaid work. And again, the reason we call it invisible labor is because you don't have a woman drawn like this, buckling under the weight of managing resources, having children, taking care of those children, building community, advocating for rights, because men were not doing that. Men were not advocating for anybody's rights but their own. The reason that we have any sort of equal rights nowadays is absolutely not because men are bearing some kind of a tax burden for equality, which is what it says in the corner over here. The tax burden has nothing to do with it. What has to do with it is the suffragettes, all the social justice movements that men actually tried to prevent, white men especially. And the reason that women don't want to fuck with 7 out of 10 men is not because women don't view them as people. It's because y'all don't view us as people. You forget about all the things that women contribute to society and to your life, period. And to add insult to injury, y'all stand on the laurels of things that you don't have to do. You don't have to invent this stuff all over again. You just get to participate in it, and most of you on the lowest level. You're actually this right here, this redistribution part. There's also a fundamental misunderstanding here of capitalism. You're not redistributing all this shit to women, dumbass. You're redistributing it to the 1%. This is the 1% up here. This is not women. Women are not up here. Women are down here alongside you, especially nowadays when they're working literally at higher rates than y'all. And you're still trying to take credit for this. Women are literally more employed than y'all. Women bring in more money, more educated, buying more houses. And you're still trying to take credit for civilization. No. The reason that women are so rightfully picky is because a lot of men stand on the laurels of the civilization that other men built. You're taking credit for a thing you didn't do. Meanwhile, you expect the women over here on this side to each, no matter what woman you choose, you want to be able to ask her for a baby. You want to ask her to support your career. You want to ask her to stay home with the children. You want to ask her to be your emotional support in a way that your buddies aren't. You want to ask her to care for you like your mommy and to fuck you like a prostitute. Meanwhile, you're not doing any of this, and nor would you be willing to, even if you could. Most men, even if they could, they would not be out here having babies for women instead of women. Most men, if they could, they would not support their wife's career instead of their own. Think about it. I mean, if women were getting such a good deal, why don't most men want to do it? Why don't more men, invest in getting really good at household tasks or supporting somebody's career? If this was such a good deal for women, why don't more men do it? This is why women are more picky, because very few men actually bring something tangible into women's lives, whereas most women that will partner with a man, especially women that will have children with a man, those women have already contributed tangibly more into the life of a man than he has ever contributed to a woman's life. And that adds a lot of insult to injury, and that's why most women are saying, it's not really that you're not people to them, it's just that you have no value to them, like tangibly. Because you stand on laurels that don't belong to you. It's not women. Women are out here still doing the things that made them important and valuable enough to fight over. They're still out here bearing and raising children. They're still out here performing most household tasks. They're still out here supporting men in all of their dumbass ventures to try and kill one another and enslave all of us. That's what women are still out here doing. Men are saying, see, aren't you glad we built the civilization? What civilization, sir? Like, why would I be glad that you built the civilization? I am not benefited by it, and you refuse to see and acknowledge that. What's in it for me? And that's why women don't want most of y'all, because the accomplishments and the things that you bring to the table are not tangible. Most men don't bring anything tangible. And most men that do bring something, the reason that, women are gold diggers and they go for rich men, because that's the only tangible value that men have ever brought to women. Whereas women bear children for men all the time. Whereas women perform household unpaid and unnoticed labor for men all the time. You don't even have to ask them. But with men, one of the few and tangible things that most men bring to a relationship with women is money, because the other guys have nothing to offer tangibly, nothing other than their needs and wants. And women just are not brought up like that because the society was built by men. So it excuses them from a lot of things. But now that women have to participate in the same things as men, like the tax burden and like holding up civilization, they don't want someone who gives them nothing for something. They want someone who gives them something for something. That's why there's an unfair distribution. But you don't have to blame the women for that. Blame your fellow men. They bring nothing to the table but faulty ideas about women and really high expectations of women. So it's a lose-lose situation, and that's why a lot of women are opting out. You've taught women not to need you by ignoring all of the labor and everything that they brought into society, by completely excluding them out of building society, and by completely removing them from the equation so you can do all this hoe math. And you still haven't answered the question of why women need men. You've only answered the question of why did men need women. I hope this helps. When you're ready to do some real math, hit me up. Mwah.